Just wanted to let you know we're going to be a couple of minutes late starting. We had our video from today's meeting was 6 hours long, and it's taken quite a bit of resources in processing up to YouTube, and so we're just making some internal adjustments and hope to be able to start shortly because we'd like to be able to live stream the meeting for folks at home. So if you can just be patient for a couple of more minutes and we'll get going as soon as we can. Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We're still having some challenges with our live streaming. Apparently, YouTube doesn't want to speak to us this evening, so we're just going to go ahead with the meeting. And we are recording locally, so the video will be posted as soon as possible. My name's Angie Legault. I'm the Corporate Officer for the Cowichan Valley Regional District, and I'd like to welcome you all to the November 13th, 2019 meeting of the Board. And I'll call this meeting to order at 6:37 p.m. The Local Government Act requires that regional districts elect a chair and vice chair at the first board meeting in November of every year. As per a previous resolution of the board, the chair of the regional district board and the regional hospital district board are held by the same director. The same applies to the position of vice chair. The first order of business, of course, then will be the election of the chair. At the close of nominations, if more than one individual has been nominated, each candidate for the chair will be given the opportunity to address the board in favor of their candidacy. Names will be drawn at random to determine the order of speaking, and a question period will follow. If an election by voting is required, the electronic voting tabulators will be used. A majority of votes of the members of the board is required to elect the chair, which means that one of the candidates must receive at least 8 votes to be elected. If there are 3 or more candidates and no one receives at least 8 votes, the vote will be repeated and the candidate with the fewest votes will be dropped from the election. This process will be repeated until a candidate is elected or until only 2 candidates remain and the vote is tied. Are there any questions from the board on the process? Seeing none, I'll call a first time for nominations for the position of chair for the Cowichan Valley Regional District Board.
I'd like to nominate Director Morrison for chair.
Director Morrison, do you accept?
Yes. I'd like to nominate Director Stone.
Director Stone, do you accept?
Yes.
Director Nicholson,
I'd like to nominate Director Toporowski.
Doctor, do you accept?
Thank you to my nominator. I am declining. I put a lot of thought into this, and it's been an interesting few days. And my endeavors next month will probably take a little bit more of my time. But once I get that under control, I'll be coming for the chair next time. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations? I'll call a second time. And any further nominations? Seeing none, I'll close the nominations. Okay, having received 2 nominations, Director Morrison and Director Stone, each candidate will be given an opportunity to address the board prior to the election. I've written their names on these slips of paper. And Director Stone, you'll be the first to address the board.
Thank you, and good evening. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, and thank you, Director Salmon, for nominating me. I'm excited to stand before you tonight again as a candidate for chair of the board. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to all of you for the year that we've had, and Director Morrison, Director at this moment, Morrison, for the leadership, and in a challenging year with a new board trying to find its feet. The Cowichan is my home. The people, the places, our culture, our communities. I've had the privilege to grow up in almost every corner of this amazing region. I may be the mayor of Ladysmith, but I have a deep connection and appreciation for every part of the Cowichan Valley. It is with this perspective that I approach the role of board chair with great purpose and determination. I've served this board for almost 5 years as director. During this time, I have served as chair of the Regional Engineering and more recently, the Regional Services Committee, and as a member of several other committees, including Grants and Aid, Regional Recreation, and Solid Waste Management. As committee chair, I have consistently worked to ensure that all points of view are able to be shared while promoting good order, fair process, and efficient decision-making. I am dedicated to serving the CVRD and committed to the principles of good governance. As a board, we can do more to support each other and increase our effectiveness. I want to build a team that is more connected, cohesive, and effective at delivering results. The chair sets the tone in establishing this culture of achievement and success among the board, and in cooperation with the CAO and staff, the entire CVRD organization. As we work to establish a new level of excellence around the board table, we will see it reflected throughout our entire organization. We can accomplish more as a motivated and solution-oriented team. I will work with our group to find consensus where we can, compromise when we're able, and respect for the majority when we must. I believe the best policy comes from diverse voices working together to find agreement and taking pragmatic steps forward based on good information and cooperative intention. It is critical for our chair to develop strong relations throughout our region, and in particular with our First Nations. We need to reinvest in building these relationships. I will work with our board, our staff, and the nations within the CVRD to reinvigorate our engagement. I will also attend any and all community functions and events where I am wanted or needed. I'm ready to support our electoral areas in any way possible. I understand that there are many different challenges that are unique to each area and others that are shared. I will work directly with each of you to support your priorities and insist in achieving your community goals. I'm 100% committed to being the most connected and supportive board chair for everyone in the region. The chair is also the spokesperson for the board and the regional district. I understand and embrace this role. Whether speaking to challenging issue in our communities or making an exciting announcement, I will deliver the board's message clearly and as effectively as possible. I will promote our communities and the Cowichan as the place to be while respecting the diverse needs and priorities throughout our region. I will proudly be your voice if elected to do so. As a capable relationship builder, advocate, and negotiator, I've developed strong connections in senior government, business groups, and community organizations. I will use these skills and relationships to advance our shared priorities and community interests. I will ensure that we are maximizing the value of our social, environmental, and economic initiatives within the region. I am and will continue to be accountable to the direction of this board at all times. I will work with every one of you on our shared priorities in our region and specific initiatives. Lost my place there. And specific initiatives within each of the diverse areas we serve. I will work to promote a culture of cooperation and the pursuit of excellence with our board and staff team. I will serve the board with a dedication, strong understanding of the duties, deep respect for the responsibility, and a level of passion and commitment that will ensure our mutual success. We have a lot to do, and I believe that I am the best candidate for chair. I hope to have your support. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Director Morrison.
Good evening and welcome, and I want to share that part of our relationship with our near neighbors, Cowichan tribes, Chief has shared with me that once that acknowledgement of where we're gathering has taken place, that it's good, and I thank you for doing that, and now we can continue with the important work at hand and the message that I could bring today to share. I'm a bit of a preparation geek, and I actually went and watched last year's speeches, and it was very informative for me. I want to first thank some of the people that have shown up today. I see we've got people from the Cowichan Stewardship Roundtable, the Cowichan Lake and River Stewardship Society. I think we've got Tourism Cowichan here as well. And I want to thank everybody else in the gallery who's come to watch a little bit of our democracy in action. So I've served the CVRD on this board for 11 years. And I can tell you without any hesitation, the last 12 months as this board's chair has been tougher than the 10 previous years combined. This is a tough gig. at first glance, imagine this. The role of the board chair is kind of like coming up on an iceberg. You see the top 1/7 above the surface, but the really tough stuff is what's going on below the surface. And everybody knows the real obvious things like the phone calls and the emails and the endless meetings. For those of you that don't know, we started at 9:30 today. And press requests, agenda reviews, it seems endless. It goes on and on and on. And I asked staff just last week how much time they think I've been spending in this building on a weekly basis. And the general consensus was about 30 to 35 hours a week. Cotton balls already. Keeping it real, Al. Then there's the 25 to 35 hours a week outside the office in the other things that a board chair does. I can tell you that I attended a function or an event or a meeting in every single one of your electoral areas and every single one of the municipalities in this regional district in the last 12 months. There's also the outside agencies that we partner with and are part of, like Island Health or Federation of Canadian Municipalities, UBCM, Cowichan Hospice, Cowichan Lake and River Stewards, who I mentioned earlier, and the Watershed Board. And if you're not aware, the chair of this board not only is the chair of the hospital board, but is the co-chair of the Cowichan Watershed Board. And there's another group that's an important group as well, and it's called ICE-T, Island Coastal Economic Trust. And I just want you to be aware that we're very well represented on that board. We have each of our 4 municipal mayors sit at that board table. Now, I've had the honor and privilege of serving you at that table, but I'm the only electoral area director from our regional district sitting at that table. I want to talk a little bit about maybe not the top 10 things that you've never heard that a chair does, but there's those little things that we do in the background that you may not be aware of. From just recently, we had a group show up for adoption of some bylaws, and they were wearing high-vis vests in the hallway. And we'd had some calls from some people that were concerned and intimidated, and I went and asked them to all remove their vests and carry them in under their arms. To funding announcements. When we get the call, the announcement's made, you're getting some money, can you be here tomorrow? It's drop everything and go. There's also Emergency Operations Center. Twice this year, I've had the board CAO come, we need your signature, we're activating a mock Emergency Operations Center. Because I've been in the building, because I've been available, I've been able to take on those tasks. And there's another one that I've sought some counsel from some of you about that, do I share it or don't I share it? And I think it's important in that we go to Union of BC municipalities to get answers and support and from various ministries. And most often, we all know what the answer is, no or not yet. And I was fortunate in that Director Nicholson had approached me to go and talk to senior staff at MOTI. And it was a great opportunity for myself, and I think it was you, Director Yenny DiNardo, and we went and attended this meeting, and I happen to know, had a good relationship with the senior MOTI person. And just before we went into the meeting, she leaned over to me and she said, by the way, you're going to get a yes at the end of this meeting. You see, I think a good chair is going to spend their political capital on anyone and everyone that they serve around this table. And I was really reluctant to talk about this because this has probably been, I don't know, one of the most emotional things I've had to deal with in 11 years. And that's our friend Mary Marcotte. Mary has been a mentor, a leader, a coach, a friend, a travel companion. She's been really important. She's taught me about how and who we serve. And at the beginning of this year, being her friend and being your board chair at the same time, was probably one of the toughest gigs I've ever had. And we've had a good outcome, and we have her alternate Colin here with us tonight. I'm really happy to say I went to visit Mary last Friday, and Mary is doing so well. It's like the Mary of old has come back. She even wanted to come here tonight and support and vote for me for chair. I will be forever indebted to her. Those are some of the things you don't see. But what have we done? What have we actually accomplished? And you know what? I'm actually going to read these things because when I started this about a month ago, and some of you might have seen an article in the paper today, I thought we really maybe hadn't done that much around here in the first year. But I'm going to read. We've created our own Made in Cowichan Code of Conduct. We've passed the bylaws for the drinking water and watershed protection and the affordable housing bylaws. We had a huge public hearing for Western Stevedoring in Cowichan Bay, and we've recently passed that rezoning. BC Salmon Restoration and Innovation Fund, $4.4 million is coming to Cowichan because of the work of the partnerships around here. $1 million will be here by April of this year. In my community, Missachi Lake has essentially a failed sewer system that is now being upgraded and improved and will ultimately end up being a South Shore sewer service, say that 10 times fast, but will make it possible for all of the old and failing septic systems to be on a proper modern sewer system. A great example of some really good governance that we've had this year was the Malahat Skywalk rezoning project. Our staff and the applicant worked together and brought a package that we could, I wouldn't say expedite, but we could work on and pass through in an efficient fashion. And that one's not only going to be good for the Malahat Nation itself, it's going to be good for the whole region. And just recently, we've agreed to fund through our taxpayers the Cobble Hill well monitoring, which is a big deal, which Director Wilson has told us that they've been after a commitment like that for 15 years. And even something today, oh, we're so close. Those dirty words called regional recreation. We're so close. It's been 3 decades the CVRD has been working on regional recreation, and we're that close. So on to next year. There's 4 key things that I want to get done in the year ahead. The first one, and it was mentioned today during our meetings, want to move the responsibility for community parks back under electoral area services where it belongs. I think that should be fairly easy to do. Next one might be a little tougher. Complete our corporate and electoral area strategic plans. If we don't have a plan, we don't have a goal, we don't know where we're going. Thirdly, we talked about this last year. I want to create a finance committee that will advise on very specific things. New staff positions, new hires, new permanent hires, new vehicle and major equipment purchases, and grant applications and their impacts on the organization. Because we found that when you get a big grant come in the door, that it's drop everything and work on that, because you got to spend the money by the deadline. Fourth, I want to create a committee, don't know whether it'll be a select committee or subcommittee, to review and advise on the CVRD's climate change adaptation policies with a specific focus on youth participation. It's key. And just before I close, last year, I think this board made some really good appointments to not only committee chairs and vice chairs, but also to other organization and outside agencies like the Municipal Finance, Municipal Insurance, and Treaty, and others. Except for some possible tweaking, I think you should all continue representing the CVRD in those roles, and I'm committed to ensuring that you do. We've all heard the phrase, it's unwise to change either canoe or horses midstream. Well, I believe I represent balance. I believe I represent continuity. And in preparing for this, I'm in a really great place in my life, in mind, body, and spirit. And I'm ready to serve again. So I humbly and respectfully ask for your support for the year ahead.
Thank you, Director Stone and Director Morris, and we're going to move to the candidate question period. The board procedures bylaw provides for a maximum of 30 minutes to ask questions of the candidates. Each director will be allowed to ask one question of one or all of the candidates, and if after all the directors have been heard and there's still time remaining, directors who have already spoken may ask a follow-up question. So I'll start the timer, and Director Nicholson.
Thank you. First, I'd just like to thank Ian for the long hours and hard work and responsibility that he undertook as chair. It is a challenging job. It really is a challenging job. And everyone around this table brings their own unique strengths and weaknesses to the board and their own values and views. And I think that's what makes the board that is working collaboratively so powerful. This board has not gelled, and I am concerned about that. And we are a group of strong-minded people. And at this point in time, I think that leadership style, tone, and approach is going to be a key factor in whether we are able to collaborate and work together effectively. And so I'd like to ask both the people that are running if they could provide some insight on how they will bring us together. And perhaps you've got some examples of where you've been successful in the past, or just some insight on what you think is going to help us work together more effectively as a team and get that strategic plan done.
Okay, so I'll random draw again for who. Director Stone.
First isn't always the best. I would say that there's a couple key words that I repeated through my speech, and I think they were meant to reinforce what I believe is the most powerful value that you can bring to this, and it's a collaborative approach. I understand, and I've seen at this board the experience we've had over the last year and some of the challenges, but in conversations with all of you, I think I've recognized not only my own shortcomings in the past 5 years, but also a desire to see us focus on outcomes and facilitating results and collaborating together in good nature and with good intention. I think from an experience standpoint, I can bring up local government experience or community experience, but I'll give a couple of examples that bring from Ladysmith. One is obviously our waterfront area plan. Ladysmith's waterfront is a former industrial site that's been sitting fallow for the better part of 30 years. And during that 30 years, there have been several attempts to move forward on remediating and restoring that waterfront. In the past 2 years leading up until the summer before last, working with Staminas First Nation and both of our communities coming together, we engaged all of the community groups, the stakeholders, and spent 18 months in a deep engagement with input from our communities, both of our communities. In our community groups, I worked with our local business area representatives, the Chambers of Commerce, Downtown Business Association, and IMO Airport, and came up with an economic development strategy that only needed about 25% from the local community because all the community groups felt it important to fund together. And we've already implemented the first 2 steps in that economic development strategy this year in our Arts and Heritage Hub as part of our waterfront plan and our app development, which is just going through beta testing right now. There are a lot of success stories I think I can share, but the most important thing that I see at our board is the connection of human beings at this table and the change in tone that could come from us all understanding that we should be focusing on outcomes, Because when I hear about what the outcomes that we want, whether it's our individual communities or the shared priorities that we have, I find that there's more shared than there is different. When we're talking about climate change or we're talking about fiscal responsibility, when we actually get down to the outcomes we seek, the differences aren't vast. I think that my experience has been that I try and put forward a collaborative tone. I always try and promote respect for each other and for the job that we do here, and I will continue to work to be that collaborative, facilitative type leader at the board.
That's a great question, Director Nicholson, and I can tell you that in this year, and talking about that 6/7 of the iceberg below the surface, that's been a huge part of it, is the interpersonal relationships of 15 people around this table, and the staff, and the people in the communities. And when it comes to leadership, I think there's a couple of components that I aim for. But what's interesting about a regional district is that the strength of the organization doesn't come from the person who sits at the end and runs the meeting and holds the gavel. It comes from the collective strength of everybody around the table. There's different powers when you're a chair. Sometimes you can lead from the front, but sometimes you have to lead from the rear, and you have to push people up. And you have to capitalize on the strengths of the people that we have sitting around this table. And I just want to say as an example, after the election, I called together some people who I knew had skills, and I knew some of the other people around the table. And we looked at who had the best capacity to do what. And when I stood at the lectern and said that I was committed to keeping people in the places that they are, for the most part, I'm not saying that's locked in, but it's because I think we've chosen well to begin with. And I think the other important part, and it's good to have Director Justice here, alternate Director Justice, but people in the gallery might not get this, but probably one of my biggest teachers this past year was Director Marsh. And Director Marsh and I didn't necessarily see eye to eye on everything, or even a few things. But we sat down and we talked and we explored some things. We even had some professional assistants that we were all had access to. And I learned that there's other ways of doing things. And taking into account people, even though you may not have the same way of thinking, you have to be prepared to learn from every one of those personalities around the table. And I hope that answers your question.
Next, I have Director Sebring.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank both of the candidates for stepping up. I certainly wouldn't want the job. I've got enough to do. Thank you very much. Director Morrison, you alluded to the fact that there might be some minor tweaks, but that for the most part you're happy with the appointments you've made. I don't know whether I'm asking you to unveil all the minor tweaks, but what are you thinking there? And to Director Stone, I didn't hear anything from you with respect to the appointments process and committees generally. It's kind of a process question, but I'm curious where you guys stand on that.
Director Morrison.
Thanks for the question. Directors have spoken to me over the past year about goals and objectives and learning opportunities, and there's only so many spots that we have. So do I have any targeted changes in mind at this point? Not that I could say specifically right now, but I just want to go back to the fact that the people that were here at the beginning, and you said the selections that I made, yeah, I recommended a few selections, but it's ultimately the board that chose most of the outside appointments and the like. And I think we've been pretty well served by the people that have been out in the community and out at these various meetings.
Thanks, Director Sebring. My first order of business would be to start connecting and consulting with people. When I say I want to do a collaborative approach, that doesn't mean to just predetermine what I think is the best move for the board. I've had great conversations over the last couple of weeks, over the last year, but specifically over the last couple of weeks with all the different members of the board. And I've learned a lot about each of us as human beings and as directors that are feeling really passionate about the work we do in each of our areas. So my first act was to work with the electoral area directors, no offense to our municipal partners, but to visit the electoral areas and just spend time understanding what the top priorities are for each electoral area director, both in terms of governance, but also in terms of capital priorities and those sorts of things that will help inform our strategic processes. But the other is consultation around the appointments from the board. So there's obviously you want somebody who's passionate about something, but you also want to continue to develop skills with people. And if somebody has an interest in an area that they want to look at serving, I think they need to be given the opportunity for consideration. So falling in the theme of collaboration and consultation and facilitation, I think it's incumbent upon the new chair to consult with the members of the board, ask them for input and opinions. I've been doing it for 5 years at my municipal table every year, meeting with everybody, talking about the appointments. In some years I've made dramatic changes, and others I've made very few. And I think that the best way to do that is to look at where we are at this point in time, where we're planning to go in the next year, and have those conversations with each of the directors.
Thank you, directors. Are there any other questions? Director Toporowski.
Thank you. I was just wondering for both of the directors that are running, what they would be doing towards Aboriginal relations moving forward. I know that I've seen both of you out in the area doing things on different events and whatnot. What kind of relationship building would you have other than talking to the chiefs of the territories? What do you see moving forward with that? Thank you.
Director Stone.
Thank you, Director. This is something I've thought about quite a bit, because over this last year I've been disappointed with our group investment in the relationships, and I know even with the previous board, our commitment to engagement seemed to wane over the last bit of the previous term. I can speak to my experience with Staminas, and that doesn't pretend to create an analog with any other relationships with First Nations, but I've learned a lot about reaching out. And the most important thing that I've found is to be engaged, be present, and be there in person. The first thing that I would do in terms of rebuilding those relationships is start to sit down and just talk. Not with an agenda item, not with a business item, not with a directive, but a conversation, human being to human being, about how we move forward together. We have a lot to do, I feel. Obviously, Cowichan Tribes is the most significant, but not the only nation in our region. And I haven't, as a group, seen us engage with the other nations in our region either. And I think we need to do that more collaboratively. With Staminas, for example, we spend a lot of time together that has no agenda item. It's other than socializing together, sharing food, sharing a meal, sharing conversations about our families, about our communities, but without the pressure of a decision that's sort of being pushed on anybody. I noticed that when we move forward in our relationships, we have very difficult, important conversations that come up, and they can only be sheltered from fracture by having strong friendships and understanding amongst each other as human beings. You know, without going into personal detail, I think that what I told Chief Elliott when I first got elected was the first meeting that I had, and it was just breakfast. And I remember saying in my hubris and excitement, this is the most important thing that I'm doing here, you know, that we can do together. And fast forward 6 months later, we had a very difficult conversation after spending a lot of time together about an issue we were dealing with. And it was very difficult for me, and I remember shaking hands thinking, I can't believe I'm going to say this to the chief, because it was very difficult, and I felt I may be even stepping outside of my boundaries. But during that conversation, because you could see that it was so difficult and it was real and it was personal, I remember John kind of saying, now I trust you. And that sort of kind of made an impression on me about how we interact as human beings and how the human element is so important. The trusting relationships that we need to build don't come from agenda items or formal meetings, but they come from getting to know each other. So I think we need to invest as a group and as individuals in developing those relationships. And it's not with just chief and council either. It's with members of each other's communities, because we are a shared community in the Cowichan as a whole. And the most enjoyable opportunities that I get, whether it's been at the Longhouse or in Staminas, has been just being able to connect as communities. And I mentioned the waterfront planning process. We spent a lot of time in both communities sort of trying to engage each other. And once you've developed an understanding in the broader community, and not everybody is always on board, but in the broader community, that you're building a trusting relationship and you're really talking to each other and coming to each other and not making it on anybody else's priority, but just a priority of community coming together. I think I've seen how successful that can be in the last few years, and I hope to continue that in the region as a whole, and grow that beyond the relationships we've already developed.
Morrison.
So it's clear Aaron's got this stuff, and I applaud him for the relationship that he's built on behalf of his community with the nation closest to him. And I don't know that there's, either one of us has got any advantage over the other in this issue, but, I can tell you that, and a measure of what Aaron was just sharing is when they start to joke at you and pull your leg, and that means you've got to that point where they trust you and that you're in, and that's important, to have those interpersonal relationships. And I think that more specifically to your question, though, Director Toporowski, is there's a real gap in our connections as organizations. And I've already begun to engage and spoken with not only your chief and some of the staff, but out at Lake Cowichan and at DD Dots, and it's about that swapping of cultures and getting to know each other's, not at the elected official level, but in staff, embedding in our organizations some understanding and knowledge. And so there's experiencing the village type of exercise, but there's staff exchanges that we could do in this organization with an organization as successful and big and effective as, for instance, Cowichan Tribes. I think that having that, we have staff that work here now that have worked in Cowichan Tribes and bring a wealth of knowledge and experience. And I think doing a staff exchange is a really important aspect. And I think there's something that's more visual and more tangible, is the idea, and this is one of our former directors brought this up. Why is it that there is, I think, one piece of Coast Salish artwork in this building, and it was in the cupboard of the previous chair, now it's on the wall in the chair's office? Why aren't we celebrating the incredible talent of our neighbors and having that on the walls, in our hallways, in our boardrooms? We got a picture of old Queen Elizabeth up there. Why don't we have some First Nations artwork on the wall in here? I think there's lots of very simple things that we can do, but it's, as Aaron said, it's the conversations and getting to that place of trusting one another.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director Justice.
Thank you. As I'm sitting as an alternate for Councillor Marsh or Director Marsh, I'll try and ask a question that I think she might be interested in hearing the answer to. So for both directors, could you outline your views on local approaches to climate change, and in particular, the climate emergency. We know that climate change is a divisive issue, polarizing issue in the community, and apparently on this board as well. So what's the best approach for thinking through climate change in a way that's not divisive?
Director Morrison.
This is a tough one, though it shouldn't be. I think that we're blessed by having the Couch and Youth Guardians in attendance today and organizing events in our streets. And I think that the messaging that we hear from, people of all ages on this issue is important. And I'm not just being in general. We serve our communities, and there's diverse views in our communities and diverse opinions. But we have to show the leadership on things like, well, are we declaring a climate emergency or aren't we? Or are we taking concrete action steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or protect riparian areas, or encouraging carbon sequestration areas and zones that are non-developable? One of the differences around a regional district board table versus a municipal table is that we've got very different governance in how we deal with these things. So a chair is not going to be able to say, we shall do this, we will proclaim this, or we will declare that. The chair will have to reflect the wishes of everybody around the table. So it's what this board will be doing and suggesting and approving that the chair will have to reflect. I hope that answers your question. Kate.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Justice / Marsh. I'm going to start out by saying one thing. I don't think it's as divisive as some people think it might be. And again, referring to the conversations that I've had with many people this week, you'll hear me talk a lot about financial impacts when I talk about climate change. And it comes from an understanding and a belief in a big tent. And sometimes that's referred to in terms of the Conservative Party, but we'll set that aside for now. But it's a big tent, and people need different reasons to come inside the tent to find their way to the right reasons, whether it's just being able to get them in the room to listen and look at the science. There's no room for denial, and I don't see any denial at this table. I see, again, shared outcomes that we seek, but different ways to get there. And I think when we focus on the outcomes and try and facilitate results and build capacity and trust in our staff teams to help us get to those results, then we can quibble about the details as we get there. Financial and social values align when it comes to climate change. And I think that when you talk about it in a way that is said to be divisive, I think we're really missing an opportunity. There are huge financial impacts, and I've used this washout that we had in Ladysmith 2 years ago as an example. It's nearly $1.5 million that we've had to spend to replace a road and a culvert because of the flows that we experience now in the winter, especially over the last 2 winters. That replacement is significantly larger than the previous one, and because it's done on stream flow monitoring and modeling that says that we're expecting 200-year stream flows at least 5 times in the next decade. So now that we know that, we have to adapt. But what's the only thing that's cheaper than adapting? And that is mitigating. So when we talk about mitigation, we need to focus on land use, carbon sequestration through ecosystem preservation and restoration, and transportation. When you look at the emissions in this region, land use, transportation, which go hand in hand, by the way, and ecosystem greenfield development, if you will, or industrial activity are the main contributors to greenhouse gas deficits that we have here that we need to make up. So again, as Director Morrison said, this isn't a question of a decree from the chair, unlike Chair Acton today said she was going to, we're denying this motion. Unfortunately, we do have to take board votes, or this would be a lot easier. These aren't area dictators, they're area directors. But it's the collaborative board work that we need to do. It refers to the strategic plan. It refers to the tone at the top that is hopefully infectious amongst this board. The one good thing I've seen about this process, and Ian knows the level of respect I have for him. I love this human being as a man and as a person. And we've worked really hard together to try and work with the board this year. But I think that there's an opportunity to have a reset in tone and engagement, and I think that I can do that. And if I'm not elected today, you have my 100% commitment to support Ian, to support this board moving forward, and I know I have the same from him. So this isn't a false choice between a good and bad option. I believe this is two good options, and I'm just thankful for the opportunity. And I thank you, Ian, for this year.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left on the clock, so if there's any last questions? Okay. Director Staples.
No, we need to go through the whole process for all the process geeks. So if you were to say something to the next generation of people sitting around this table, and I don't mean in 3 years from now, I mean in 25 years from now, what is the one thing that you think as chair that you would be able to leave them with?
Director Morrison.
Great question. And I think that it's a tough one, once again, as chair, because my role this past year has been to reflect what this board has told me to reflect out to the community. Had a couple of tough spots in that, but I think that I was talking with my wife outside before the meeting. And if I were to tell a board 25 years from now, gosh, they could be a district municipality by then, but I would say that there is no issue, item, matter that you can sell your integrity and your honor and your respect for to gain a position, to gain an appointment, that it boils down to this. If you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything.
I'm kidding, that's just a cheap building on what he said. As Doug Patterson says at our council, what he said. Hopefully we can say, aren't you proud of us? But we've got 3 years to prove that. I think that based on my experience, I'm such a strong believer in the power of humanity and people who have an open mind. And so I would always, if I said one sentence, it would be kind with an open mind. Because when you get into this role, I think every one of us knows how stressful it can be in its own right. When you come to this table, you need to be able to look across the table and feel like you're supported and given the opportunity to share your viewpoints and have those be respected and help mold the policy that we're looking for. Another quote that I'll use, and this is just because it comes from my family, and I use it on my teenager now because we burned it into his brain when he was a kid, but it is come from Spider-Man. It's with great power comes great responsibility. And I think everybody at this table, sometimes I think we get caught up in the difficulty in the decision-making process, but we are endowed with great power at this table. We are the closest level of government that affects people's lives. And with that power comes a great responsibility. And when it comes to the way that we engage each other, that we move policy forward, that we help determine the future of our region, that comes with a great responsibility. And I think we need to respect that by having respect for each other with kindness and an open mind.
Thank you, directors. I think we're down to about a minute and a half, so I think we'll call time on that. And proceed to the voting. So we will hand out the electronic voting devices. Please don't touch any buttons until you're told the system is ready. The last button that you touch is the vote that will be counted, and just to let you know, the meeting did start streaming shortly before 7 o'clock, and we'll have the rest of the video posted tomorrow.
Actually invite the elders to lead us right now in this movement forward into this new time that we have together. This is not just a climate emergency, it's a time that we really look at social justice. We cannot separate them. This actually goes together. And I'd like to see something tangible happen, some kind of movement that sets in place something that will actually be accountable to those who are feeling anxious and will support us in the adaptation that we're going to need to be ready for as we move through this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We do have about, I think 90 seconds left. Oh, sorry, about 30 seconds if somebody wants to get something in quickly. All right, moving on then, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr.
No
Chair.
delegations.
There are no delegations, so item 8 is the report of the chairperson.
And look at this, I got this huge report for you. No, I don't, I'm kidding. I just want to take an opportunity to again thank Director Morrison for your contributions. You know, I think that, you know, everyone around this table has shown a willingness to collaborate, especially as we've gone through this process. And although I know it was as close as it possibly can be, I think that reflects well on both Director Morrison and myself as being quality candidates. And I don't think there's that much that separates him and I in terms of our intention and dedication to this work. And I just hope that we can come together, focus on outcomes, and achieve results together on climate change and other things as well. So with that, we will continue our agenda. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No correspondence or items for information, so on to committee and commission reports. Item CR1 is the report and recommendation of the Cowichan Community Centre Commission meeting of October 10th, 2019.
Director Nicholson.
The Cowichan Community Centre Commission meeting of October 10th, 2019 recommends that the license of use with Duncan Dynamics Gymnastics Club for use of the space at Cowichan Community Centre effective September 1st, 2019 to August 31st, 2021, as referred to in the report dated August 27th, 2019 from the manager, Cowichan Community Centre, be approved.
And do you move that? Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Item CR2 is the report and recommendations of the Regional Services Committee meeting of October 23rd, 2019.
All right, I'll read these out. The first, item number 1, I'll read them out and then I'll go to you, Director Kuhn. Number 1, that staff prepare a report in the context of the One Cowichan checklist that outlines what CVRD is currently doing, as well as the opportunities and options for additional substantive actions that will address the urgent climate crisis. Number 2, that the Cowichan Valley Regional District acknowledge that there is a climate emergency. Number 3, that the Memorandum of Understanding between the CVRD and Halalt First Nation related to current and ongoing collaboration on watershed management as attached to the Environmental Services Division's October 10th, 2019 staff report be approved. Director Kuhn.
I would like to see item 1 and 2 pulled.
So we can deal with them separately because there's only one item left. So we'll deal
All
with
right.
them individually.
Sure,
We
that's
will
fine.
start at the top of the list. So you've heard the recommendations. Do we have a mover for number 1? I'll let you follow up and then I'll go to the floor.
Actually, I would like to see number 1 and 2 put together because it's the same subject, basically.
It's not from other people's perspective. We'll deal with them
All
one
right,
at a time.
okay.
So I asked for a mover for number 1. I think I saw Director Sebring and Acton. So that's on the floor. Discussion. Director Smith.
Thank you very much. I understand the concerns of the people that spoke earlier, but I also sit at a table where we have a taxation issue. We were looking at taxes and budgets today, an increase of time for staff. Preparing a list for one specific group within the community then opens us for every group to come forward and start asking for checklists and other things that are taking staff time. And we don't have staff time to even do the work that's on their agenda now. We're making decisions to remove items from their workload, and this increases the workload for staff and for one specific group. We open this door, it becomes a revolving door forever. So I don't believe that we should be moving number one and having this checklist and the staff time involved for one specific group. I can't support number one.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a quick comment before I resume the speakers list. We never set precedent. Every decision that comes to this table is the prerogative of the board, so there's no opening the door to other checklists. They come and they go. We decide to move forward or not. Director Kuhn.
We discussed taxes this morning, or most of the day, and we've become aware that we often take on services or subjects without thinking about the cost, and the cost comes up later, and then we're all shocked. We are working on a strategic plan, and this item would have to fit into that strategic plan. I can't see how we can separately deal with this item and not consider it in our strategic plan. And so as far as I'm concerned, at this point, I couldn't vote for this. I would like to see it referred back to regional services and then have a discussion about that, how it fits into our strategic plan. Not only that, but what the possible cost implications are. Because as we found out this morning, the costs are rising everywhere. And before I would even express an opinion on this, I'd have to get some kind of an idea of what we're looking at financially.
Thank you. I have Director Staples, then Sebring.
Okay, so I think what I'd like to propose is that we actually refer this to our strategic planning session, this first one, for a discussion on, because while I appreciate what is here, I think that there's also a lot more that can be added to this if we want staff to do a report. There's a lot happening at UBCM, at FCM. We were just at the Livable Cities Conference. There's a lot of different things happening. And so I feel like at a strategic planning session, we could have a more fulsome discussion about where and how this fits and what we would like to direct staff to do, include not to be exclusive of anything else. My only concern is when are we having that next strategic planning session where we could discuss this? And for that, I would ask, I'd like to ask that question before I make a referral motion.
I was going to meet with the CAO about this probably tomorrow to come up with that schedule, but I would have to ask staff right now if there's any additional sessions planned. I don't believe there is.
Would it be, are we going to be doing this in the next 3 months, the strategic?
Yeah. So my
Okay.
priority will be to get the strategic plan
Okay.
back under active pursuit ASAP.
So then I'd like to refer number one to that session, to that strategic planning session.
So the referral motion's been made. Do we have a seconder? Director Justice and discussion on the referral. I've got Directors Nicholson, then Sebring.
So my only concern is that I think it would be useful when we have this strategic discussion to understand where we're at with this, with some of the issues, because I think that I think people don't really get what has already been undertaken and how much of a contribution that's making to mitigation and where our I think we're a little bit more up to speed on the adaptation risks and what we need to do there. But I'm just thinking that some information going into the strategic planning session would be helpful, because I think that was one of the reasons why we didn't progress very well.
So I'll ask through to staff if there I know we have a lot of volumes of information that I refer to quite often. Would there be, what would the CAO's perspective be on, if this is referred, kind of collecting some of that information to workshop through with the board?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't help but think that if you're having a discussion about climate change and climate change potential initiatives, some sense of what it is that we've been doing. We do have a lot of that information compiled already through our corporate emissions plan and strategy. So staff would certainly be able to bring together that material that we already have that demonstrates the work that we've been doing and the work that's being planned over a period of time. But it's, you know, it would be up to the board if the board wanted staff to spend time ahead of time categorizing the work. And the recommendation here is to use the checklist that One Cowichan has. I would certainly leave that to the committee. But in the meantime, we would have material to bring to that process, as well as the Cowichan 2050 framework that provides a fair bit of background in terms of both where we've been and where we're going. So that would be my perspective.
Thank you. I have Director Sebring and Staples on the referral.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't support the referral. Look, this is a simple report. We just heard from the CAO that most of the data is available. I'd like to see this report because I think this report will show us and it will show the community that we as a regional district and that the municipalities within this regional district are leading the pack in BC, and I would arguably say in the country, when it comes to awareness about this issue, when it comes to the commitment to this issue, when it comes to specific steps that we've taken and that we are taking. When I look at Cowichan 2020, when I look at North Cowichan's Climate Action Energy Plan, when I look at specific on-the-ground things, there are very few local governments in this province that are as far ahead of the curve on this issue as us. And I'm presupposing the outcome of the report, but I can't imagine this report saying anything other than that. And I think, with all due respect to One Cowichan, that they need to know that, because they presented us with this checklist like we're not doing anything. We're doing a lot.
Thank you. Director Staples.
So I'm going.
On the referral.
Yeah, on the referral. So I don't know if I would have to make an amendment to the referral to include the report at the strategic planning session about what we did, so that people, so that all of us have the history and have the information about what is happening. I still believe that this should actually go to our strategic planning session, particularly because of the additional substantive actions that will address the urgent climate crisis, because I think that that's something that the board also needs to have discussion about. And that is part of strategic planning. And so I really feel that we just haven't got there yet. And then we can give the board, after discussion from everyone around the table as well, having input, more direction as to what that is. I think that the board needs to be a part of that process. And so, well, I don't disagree that we could go through the checklist and get all of that done and present that to the board. I feel like it should still be part of our strategic planning session, and then that will come back here as information, and then One Cowichan and we'll have that checklist, but we will at least have the ability for everyone here to know what the CVRD has been doing, but also to hear from all of us about the actions that we believe we should be taking, and to hear from staff about that actions, and to do that as part of strategic planning makes the most sense to me at this point.
Thank you. And again, I'm just going to remind everybody, trying to keep it tight on the referral. We're getting the debate of the resolution in there a little bit. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your appointment. I'm fully in agreement with what Director Sebring said about we are, as far as I know, doing as much or more than a lot of the other the other people are doing throughout the area. But I just wonder if Director Staples could explain what she means by additional substantial actions that should be taken.
So I don't, again, we're not debating the issue right now. This is a referral to strategic planning. So I'm going to ask us not to debate it. If the referral motion is denied, then we can go back to the issue and get into the meat of it. I saw a hand over here with Director Kuhn. So again, on the referral, if I don't have any more speakers, I'll call the question. Again, this is to refer this item to strategic planning. All those in favor? Opposed? Directors Wilson, Haim, Sebring opposed, is that it? Got everyone? The referral passes. Moving on to item number 2. The Cowichan Valley Regional District acknowledged that there is a climate emergency, moved by Director, my brain is dead, Nicholson, seconded by Director Staples. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Directors Wilson, Smith, and Kuhn opposed. Oh, and Sebring. So those are the 4 opposed. Motion passes. Number 3, that the memorandum of understanding between CVRD and Halalt Nation related to current and ongoing collaboration on watershed management as attached to the Environmental Services Division October 10th, 2019 staff report be approved. Moved by Director Staples, seconded by Director Morrison. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Moving on to CR3, Ms. Legault. Oh, yeah, and you can introduce it for Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of November 6th, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Report and recommendations from the November 6th meeting. Recommendation 1.1, the asset management capacity building projects described in the attachment A of the Finance Division. Staff report to the November 6, 2019 Electoral Area Services Committee meeting be approved. 2, that Function 100, General Government 2020 requisition, be increased to include the portion 19% of the capacity building approved projects as detailed in Attachment A of the Finance Division staff report to the November 6, 2019 Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. 3, that the electoral area projects described in Attachment B of the Finance Division staff report to the November 6, 2019 Electoral Area Services Committee meeting be approved as amended. 2, that $12,500 of the Electoral Area B Community Works Funds 2.0 be allocated to the hub for the water treatment upgrade required to meet the legislative requirements and recommendations of Island Health for the new water and septic treatment system on the condition that the Cowichan Station Area Association enters into a funding agreement with the CVRD that meets the requirements of the gas tax agreement. 3, Cowichan Valley Regional District apply for the administrator grant funding from Union of British Columbia Municipalities to prepare a regional housing needs report on behalf of the electoral areas and the City of Duncan, Municipality of North Cowichan, Town of Ladysmith, and the Town of Lake Cowichan. 4, that the following properties be excluded from the parcel tax roll for the Shawnigan Beach Estate Sewer Service as the properties are incapable of receiving the service. PDI 03-363-705, PDI 030363-721, PDI 030363-730, PDI 030363-748, and PDI 030363-713. And 5, that the certificate of sufficiency confirming the sufficient petition requesting inclusion to the Bald Mountain Water Service Area for the following properties, PDI 009-765-468, Parcel A, District Lot 29, Lake Cowichan District, except amendment Parcel ADD 990221 be received. 2, that the CVRD bylaw number 3180 Bald Mountain Water Service Establishment bylaw 2008 be amended to include the following properties, PDI 009-765-468. 3, the amendment bylaw be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and adoption. Number 6, that the Town of Lake Cowichan and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing be advised that CVRD is not able to support the annexation as there is insufficient rationale and justification provided at this time. 7, that the soil deposit permit SDC-19-15 4310 Chester Road, PDI 028-237-765 be approved. 8, that the soil deposit permit SDC-19-13 670 Shawnigan Lake Road, PDI 006-322-549 be approved, and I move those items.
Those items have been moved. Do I have a seconder? Director Smith, and discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Electoral area directors only vote on the following items, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. I'm not sure if anybody wants any pulled. I did have some talk that some people, seeing none. 9, that the directors from area F, E, and I be delegated to the public hearing for the application number 01-F-17RS, PDI 009-845-526. 10.1, the development variance permit number DVP19D06, PDI 003-300-412 to vary zoning bylaw number 3705, section 5.74B, minimum setback for building and structures from the front parcel line from 7.5 meters to 5.7 meters be approved. And 2, that the development permit application number DP19D06, PDI 003-300-412 be approved. 11, the development permit application number DPI8C10, PDI 006-830-811 be approved. 12.1, the development variance permit DVP19E04, PDI 009-667-563 to vary section 5.2E of CVRD's electoral area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora zoning bylaw number 184, 1998, to increase the maximum size of an accessory building from 100 square meters to 177 square meters be approved. And 2, the development permit application number DP19E04, PID 009-667-563 for the construction of a single residential dwelling and 3 accessory buildings be approved. And 13, that the CVRD approve in writing that the removal of the vegetation is as required to accommodate electrical transmission line work on Covenant Area A of Covenant ED110521. I move those items.
Seconded by Director Kuhn this time. Discussion on those? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to bylaws. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item B1, CVRD bylaw number 4296, Electoral Area F, Community Park Service Amendment, Requisition Limit Increase bylaw number 2019, be it for adoption.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Nicholson. Discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. I believe we're on to question period. Question period. If you'd like to ask a question, please come up, or you could take it easy on me because it's my first day.
We'll take it easy because it's your first day. Congratulations.
Thank you. Seeing no further business, I'll get a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Acton. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. We'll take just 5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Really?